Story number 8, and the final lucky 8-ball story that made it to the Mediator this week. Top story. What role is tech and the media playing in current affairs? Now, tech, media, the news, this is all something that has stirred up conversation. Now we see the Republicans or Donald Trump or people who is base, or we could call the Trumpites, however you want to call them. You constantly see them throwing stones at the media. We've even heard the president himself try to make a mockery or saying the media is the enemy. And we've seen how John McCain, when he went to the grave, he said the sign of a dictator is usually how he treats the media. So these are all talking points, but we see the impact that it has. Now I found a story. I believe it was Mitch McConnell. He was talking about conspiracy theorists, fake news, how this shapes our thinking, how people view the government, and this is usually what makes people do the things that they do. We've seen reporters like Alex Jones talk about Bohemian Grove. We've seen people just have an idea or a view that somebody is plotting against them. Somebody, we looked at Beto O'Rourke, who just gave up on his presidential bid. He even himself, he was talking about a conspiracy talking about how is the government trying to take away our guns. You look at story number 8 and the reality on how the media, how technology has been able to advance this style of news, this type of thinking. Is there some conspiracy? Does the government answer to some big alien? You can even take it back to Iraq, where there was a book I've came across with Condoleezza Rice. I think it was called No Higher Honor. She was talking about how the media pretty much gave President Bush some disinformation about weapons of mass destruction with Iraq and how this misled the people. Now you can look at these stories, and then a conspiracy theorist will say this was done by design to get us into Iraq, into the war. So you can see these schools of thoughts do arm wrestling on what is actually real and what's actually fake. You can even look at the World Trade Centers, the Twin Towers. You can look at stories like that, how the media and technology shape those stories. Who would have thought some thugs from overseas, billionaires, got together and said, well, I hate to use the term thugs, but that's the reality. They came from the lower streets of the Middle East, and they got together and they plotted an attack on the Twin Towers. But some conspiracy gurus will tell you that, hey, how does that sound? Is there something fishy about that? Or how people with less could infiltrate a country with an abundance of wealth. So even with the way that the planes hit the towers, you see these stories, and it makes you think. And this is why this story is at the top. Even looking at you look at some of the stories that the media puts at full circle. Some people say the media does this to create controversy because it enhances their business model. But me personally, going through these stories constantly, having to do this, getting in here every week to give you the top 8, I can say I become sympathetic when I'm reading stories about, say, a 7-year-old girl who was shot while trick-or-treating. And I look at these stories, and me personally, I see the responsibility of being a journalist. The reason why you have to report, the reason why I report, is to hopefully that somebody someday will understand that this is a cause and effect scenario, and this is why people need to be informed, so it will not happen, so somebody will save the day by reporting, keeping the discussion alive so it can stop. And then you look at stories. You can even look at the story about how Joe Biden was denied communion. You report these stories to get people to understand what's happening in the inner circle of Joe Biden. Is a human being. He's just a politician. Facebook, Google, and Apple accused of enabling online slave markets. You look at the story, what it will do, how it will get people to understand bigger companies and how they're handling even slave markets and stuff like that. This is why these stories are important, and this is why news is important. There's even some other stories that surfaced in from media outlets. One Middle East expert says that they need a media presence in the bloodshed in Iran. So that's why you got to look at story number 8 and what it is. The media and technology plays a big role in getting people to understand what is important. Edward Snowden says Facebook is just as untrustworthy as the NSA. So this is Edward Snowden's opinion on Facebook. Now, there was a Utah man. He was 24. He live streamed the killing of his mother on Facebook. These are things that are happening in real time, and this is why people's views of the media and the technology are changing. If you take media out of the picture, if you take journalists out of the picture, you will see how dictators rise. You will see how people you can already see how less informed people, how they respond to certain scenarios, certain situations. This is why people need to be educated, and this is why if anybody wanted to deprive their citizens of anything, if you deprive your citizens of knowledge and being informed, that's why you are labeled a dictator. And there's some other stories that talked about how there was a story about how more than half of U.S. children are now using smartphones. Google's smart city in Toronto gets the green light. Twitter CEO says company will stop accepting political ads. Australia accuses Google of misleading consumers over location data. Good or bad, average time teens spend watching videos online nearly doubled since 2015. A CEO says Amazon will turn U.S. cities into ghost towns, and he is calling for an internet tax. As you can see, story number 8 is heating up, and that's why it's at the top. Technology and the media, front and scale. The pros and cons, people are starting to weigh them out. I say if you use them for good, you'll get good results. If you use them for bad, you will keep seeing these stories on the radar. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Mediator this week. It's been a long week, and I have done my duty as the Mediator. I've gone through 8 top stories. So if you want to contribute, help me out. Constantly reminding you that I watch the pendulum. I'm just a mediator. The news journalists and people on the front lines deserve all the credit. So if you want to help us out, it doesn't take much. METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method80.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. I always like to end the show by thanking all the news outlets, all the journalists, the YouTubers, the people who are staying on the front lines, trying to figure out what stories are important. I'm just a mediator, navigating these stories, reading, doing my dance from the right to the left, watching the pendulum swing to keep you informed. So if you want to be a contributor, it doesn't take much. Check out the stories that almost made it in, did make it in. I upload these stories. I put them on the website. I do everything I can. It doesn't take much. The name is up above. METHOD, the number 8, INC.com, method80.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. I am out of here. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator with me, Brian West.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.